And here in Ask the Quetzal, we respond to El Pibe C2D, who asked us to talk about the Tlatoani Diego de Alvarado Huanitzin. Look, the truth is that we are taught our history very poorly. Most people believe that when Tenochtitlan fell, everything ended. Mexico was conquered, as many say, and the so-called Indians were stripped of everything, even their clothing. But in reality, much of this is not entirely true. While many of the main rulers at the time of Cortés' arrival were killed or died from new diseases, at least during the following decades after 1521, the fall of Tenochtitlan, there was a power reorganization under Spanish supervision. Many survivors from the original noble classes fought for the power the Spaniards left them. Obviously, all were baptized as Christians. Many of the nobles adopted European-style clothing. Some owned horses and swords, and others even traveled to Spain to request favors from the Spanish king, with some staying there to live. Some even married Spaniards and had children with them, receiving Spanish noble titles and other benefits that most of the population did not enjoy. For instance, Moctezuma's daughter, Tequixpo or Isabel de Moctezuma, received many benefits, and her descendants enjoyed economic pensions until 1934. So, for some, the panorama wasn't as devastating as it might seem. And an example of this new dynamic is Diego de Alvarado Huanitzin. He experienced the transition from the pre-Hispanic era to the beginning to the colonial period. In his origins, he belonged to the noble class and was related to the highest levels of Mexica society, as he was the grandson of Tlatoani Axayacatl and nephew of Moctezuma Xocoyotzin. At the time of Hernán Cortés' arrival, he was Tlatoani of Ejecatepec. Cortés often imprisoned non-allied rulers to keep them close, dominate the people, and prevent revolts, as he did with Moctezuma and later with Cuauhtémoc. That's why Diego de Alvarado Huanitzin was also imprisoned by Cortés. He was one of the nobles who accompanied Cortés to Las Cibueras, a journey in which Cortés killed Cuauhtémoc and many others in the Maya jungle. However, Huanitzin survived and avoided being killed during that journey. Upon his return, Huanitzin was freed and resumed his role as Tlatoani of Ejecatepec, ruling for 14 years. Evidence of his existence can be found in colonial codices, where he is still depicted in traditional attire. In this environment, the Spaniards, at least in the first decades after their arrival, allowed some indigenous descendants to continue ruling in a way. After Cuauhtémoc's death in 1525, 10 years passed before the first viceroy of what was now called New Spain arrived, Antonio de Mendoza. Mendoza sought to reestablish the Mexica Tlatoani lineage, and in 1538 he chose Huanitzin as the first Tlatoani of Tenochtitlan in the colonial period. Here we see him again with the turquoise crown of the Tlatoani, and on the other side is Viceroy Mendoza. Notably, based on the glyph of a flag we see here, it is believed that his Nahuatl name was Panitzin, or Venerable Flag, although all sources refer to him as Huanitzin. Prior to his selection, there were internal struggles for the position of Tlatoani, as several relatives of deceased Mexica rulers fought amongst themselves. In fact, one of Moctezuma's sons was poisoned. It is unknown whether Huanitzin had a hand in this intrigue, but whether he participated or not the death of this other noble paved the way for Huanitzin to be named Tlatoani of Tenochtitlan. To strengthen his position, he married one of Moctezuma's daughters, named Francisca Moctezuma. Together, they received benefits from the Spanish crown, as the king granted this coat of arms to the Alvarado family in 1536, and Huanitzin was appointed Tlatoani of Tenochtitlan. Supposedly, he still retained traces of ancient beliefs, as it is said that he kept the bundle of Huitzilopochtli remains, perhaps as a symbol of power, although this is hard to believe since the Spaniards wanted to eradicate such heretical symbols. As Tlatoani, he only ruled for 4 years, before dying in 1541. He had several children, who also positioned themselves well in the new Spanish society. One of his daughters, Juana de Alvarado, married with the ruler of Tlacopan. Another son, Cristobal de Guzmán Cesetzin, also became the governor of Tenochtitlan. Perhaps the most well-known of his children was Hernando de Alvarado Tezosomoc, an interpreter who provided much information from that time, and he authorized the Chronica Mexicayotl. Thus, the conquest proved advantageous for Diego de Alvarado Huanitzin, as without it, he never would have been named Tlatoani of Tenochtitlan. His story shows that the conquest or invasion did not affect everyone in the same way. Our character is an example of how many of the pre-Hispanic noble class repositioned themselves within the new Spanish way of life. And as always, if you have any questions, ask the Quetzal.